off at, last Sunday, right?
Well, we finished last Sundays.
Oh, we did,
Mhm.
okay. So we're gonna be doing the,
So what we're doing today is we're playing catch up. I guess I should turn the mic on.
yeah.
Good morning, everybody. So today we're going to be playing a bit of catch up because I want to make sure that next week we're back on track. So today we're going to be combining lessons 10 and 11. The majority of our focus is going to be in lesson 10, and we're going to be focusing on sections 2 and 3, which is the discipline and instructions commended, and that's Proverbs 22, 6, 15, and 29, 15, and Ephesians 6, 4. And the purpose of divine correction in Hebrews 12, 15, and 11. Then once we get through that, we're going to jump over to part 3 of lesson 11, which is going to be benefits of honoring parents. So it's going to be a little bit of bouncing, but it shouldn't be too bad. You know, it goes together pretty nice, actually. But before we get into that, Brother Sammy? Please. And as he's getting that, Sister Janie, can you please pray over the offering and the lesson?
Lord, thank you, praise you. Lord, let this offering be used for the furthering of your kingdom and your will, Lord. Lord, bless each and every one here to hear the word, Lord. Give Kim the word that we may learn and know you better, to follow your instructions, Lord. Touch our minds, our lips, our hearts, Lord, to only praise and honor you and think of you, to worship you on this day, Lord. Give the pastor the words he needs to say. Lord, let it be a wonderful time of fellowship and learning. In your sweet and wonderful name we pray, sweet Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be, oops, well, that's not a good day. I almost lost my microphone. So we're going to be jumping, we're going to start in lesson 10, and then we're going to do sections 2 and 3, and then we're going to go over to lesson 11, and I'm sorry, working in section 3 of that. Now, see, our central truth, we're going to combine the two. Christian parents are to nurture their children in the ways of the Lord, and God's word instructs children to honor and obey their parents. Our focus, highlight and reinforce the truth that children must honor and obey their parents, and also conclude that Christian parents are responsible to discipline their children by word and deed. Our evangelism emphasis, it is imperative for parents to reach their children with the gospel of Jesus Christ, and submitting one's life wholly to Christ can enrich family relationships. Our golden text this morning is going to be taken from lesson 10 in Deuteronomy 6, 6, and 7. And it goes, "And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children." Now, first I want to say, I'm thankful that this weather outside is rain and not snow. So, just had to get that out of the way. We had enough snow, we had enough ice. You know, a little bit of rain is a good thing. So sadly, modern studies have indicated dissatisfaction and unhappiness among some parents who wondered if having children was worth it. In a 2021 CNBC report, sociologist Jennifer Glass reported on the results of one survey. The happiness bump that parents experience right after birth of a child tends to dissipate over the course of a year. And in 2017, Dr. Mark Holder wrote an article in Psychology Today titled, "Does Having Children Make Us Happy?" His conclusion after reviewing various studies was that it depends on where someone lives. Why do we suppose that is? Anybody?
It's not lives physically, is it?
Speak up a little, Jane.
It's more where you live inside, whether you're gonna have the happiness, not, is it the area they're talking?
I don't know, it sounds like it says where, so the location. So like somebody in, I don't know, Florida might be happier than somebody up in North Dakota.
Or the community that supports, you know,
It could be.
children, to make sure education is a good thing in churches
Mhm.
that are unified.
To me, it sounds like it's a study of like more,
Geological location.
I'm sorry?
Geological.
Geological, but also non-Christian. You know, I can't see, I know raising children is tough. We have 6 between us. But I don't see any difference in the physical location unless you're in a community of other people, you know, kind of raising together like in homeschooling and all and like that kind of stuff. So I could see like maybe some homeschool parents being happier than, you know, with kids in systems and stuff. I don't know. Anybody else? So bringing up children is challenging and frustrating at times, but it's part of the human experience for many. In any venture or undertaking, there will be good and bad, peace and turmoil. So our first section, actually I'm going to just read this little part from section 1, and it goes, "People who pursue lives without God find nothing but emptiness and frustration. Their lives are meaningless and toilsome. However, those who make God their foundation enjoy his protection and favor. Their lives are purposeful and fulfilling." But notice it doesn't say that it's easy. You know, it never promises easy. So, people who pursue lives without God find nothing but emptiness and frustration. Now, where do we see a lot of that today? You know, even in the Christian community, you know, we have, you know, people raising their children that, okay, the Sunday morning basketball game or Sunday morning football game is more important than going to church. Or we have dance activities on Wednesday nights, so we got to make sure our children are there. So they're putting all these other priorities in front of their Christianity or their belief system. And I've seen that, I've seen that since my children were younger. Guilty of it, you know. And I think especially us as Christians have to really make sure that, you know, it's good to have our children active in things, but put the first things first. You know, make sure that we're bringing them up right, and getting them out to church, getting them around other children within the church, and not worrying so much about, you know, the sports and the dance and the other activities. Are they important also? Yes. But nothing is as important as our relationship with Jesus and God. So the first section we're going to start in is section 2 out of the first lesson, and it's discipline and instruction commended. And it's Proverbs 22:6 and 15. And in your books, it's on page 198. The scripture is, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. So the conduct and behavior of a child outside the home was typically indicative of the level of instruction provided in the home. The same generally rings true today, even when formal schooling and foundations of learning are established in the home and environment. So I remember growing up and, different friends of mine, some of them got away with a lot more than I did or others did. And I don't know if any of you recall growing up and seeing your friends in different ways and noticing that some houses were, more free to do whatever they wanted, while others.
Raised as a preacher's daughter, certain people, we couldn't go to their house because my dad was like, that's a bad influence.
But you growing up like that, you sounds like you had a stricter household then.
Yeah.
I agree. I know that my best friend growing up, she always came to my house. She spent a lot of time at my house, and I wasn't allowed to go to her house.
Really?
My mom kind of had no rules, and it was kind of, do what you want.
Okay.
Sort of thing, and her mom was a little wild. I remember her telling me many, many times, and of course I would fuss about my parents being strict,
Mhm.
not being allowed to do this or that or the other, and I can remember her saying, I wish my mom was like your mom and dad.
Oh, wow.
And now she's, she parented her kids a lot like my mom and dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So she
Yeah.
did just the opposite of
Yeah,
how she was
did. I mean,
raised.
she could have made the choice to do whatever, whenever she
Mhm.
wanted, but she didn't. She wanted that.
That's neat.
Proof that, influences are important.
Mm-hmm. It is. Anybody else? So in the book of Proverbs, the responsibility of parental guidance is frequently understood. Since children are naturally inclined toward a sinful, self-willed behavior, parents must correct them to guide them toward wise behavior. In verse 6, Solomon pointed to the positive potential of parenting. To train up a child in the way he should go is to guide, instruct, encourage, and cultivate the child's development. Parents are expected to point them in the right direction of faith in God, good morals, responsibility, fairness, and hard work, among other desirable outcomes. It is irresponsible and destructive to allow children to grow up without such guidance and direction. As the roots of an oak tree dig deep into the soil to provide strength and stability for future growth, so do the guidance of parents prepares their children for adulthood and maturity. Now, I don't go a lot of places, but when I do go out, I do notice that a lot of children today are a little bit more on the wild side. Maybe a little.
Yes.
I don't want to say feral because there's a difference between the feral child and the wild
If you talk
child.
about my grandson Xavier, he's feral. He's feral. I'm working on that.
I know. But, we do see that today with kids just being a little more amped up.
If you think about it, back when we were growing up, it was eat what you were served, and you weren't served like high sugary things,
Mm-hmm.
offered this and that. Now, even the nutrition shows out in a kid.
Yeah.
What they're eating.
Oh, yeah. Nutrition definitely plays a big part of that, but I won't go down that rabbit hole. Ms. Jane?
We being more isolated had more opportunity to be taught on a more personal level with parents and
Mm-hmm.
neighbors, but the children today have so much access to outside and everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Every other child that's living a different lifestyle from a different area, from a different region.
Right.
But you're talking about feral children. I feel like I was kind of a feral child when I was little. The only place I wanted to be was up in the mountains and top
Mhm.
of a tree looking out. I wasn't getting into trouble, but I did not want to be
Right, okay, but I think a lot of us grew up that way, you know, going out, feral, just spending time doing whatever out in the woods or out hanging out with our friends. But today, I think it's more, you know, kids' social lives are more organized and structured.
Yes.
You know, they're like, okay, we're going to this event, you know, you have your friends there, you're going to school, you have your friends there, you know, we're going to practice, your friends are there. It's not like they're getting together and going out for a weekend just, because I used to disappear for a weekend.
And I think it's lazy parenting, a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they give them a screen, they give them a, you know,
Yeah.
instead of talking and interacting
Yeah.
and, you know, just having conversations with the children.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of kids don't, you know, I think a lot of them don't know as much how to
Yeah.
have a conversation or have a, you know, because they're too busy texting or Snapchatting or,
Right,
you know, it's just different
it
than,
is.
than we were, where, you know, you picked up the phone and you called somebody and talked to them
Mhm.
and had that
Or you
conversation
have
back and
knocked on
forth.
the door and said, hey, can so-and-so.
Yeah, it's not that way.
No. No. And is it because there's so much other influence? Is it because of all the different screen times? I like what you said about the lazy parenting. I think it is a lot to do with it.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, not for all, but I
right.
there is a lot out there that, you know, just don't bother me because the parents, that's what they're doing.
The parents want to be on their screens. I remember growing up, I mean, screen time was Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah.
And once
Yeah.
those cartoons were
Bowl of
over,
cereal.
you were, yeah, exactly, a bowl of cereal, the Saturday morning
And
cartoons.
it's that instant gratification, like they don't have a lot of patience because everything they go to is instant gratification.
Right,
They don't have to work toward, I mean, you know, you have, if you wanna get on a computer, you can go right where you wanna go.
mhm. You don't have to wait for
If you
Saturday
play
morning for the
sport,
cartoons.
A lot of times you're gonna get a trophy no matter what.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of that kind of,
It's the instant gratification and the participation trophies. So yeah, it is a lot different, and I don't think it's definitely not easier.
No.
You know, I honestly believe that parents today have a harder time raising kids because of all those different distractions and all those different inputs. Because, you know, growing up in a neighborhood with your friends, you know, that was your major influence right there.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't somebody from another state, it wasn't somebody, you know, from another country possibly. I mean, and there's just so much input on these kids today. It's not easy.
Yeah, I remember the days when our neighbor would come over, mom and dad was at work, and they knew we were over doing something we wasn't supposed to. They would spank us and
Mhm.
tell mom and dad when they got home, we got another spanking.
Yep, been there too.
it's like a village or whatever. Even seeing the difference between like, kind of my older kids to even like with Peyton, like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, okay, put down that phone, come in here, let's talk, you know, talk to us.
Yeah.
You know, put it down, you know, where there wasn't as much of that with the older ones and stuff. So it is harder. It is harder to say, okay, you just have to say, okay, put that up.
Right.
We're gonna talk, you know?
Yes. And what I like is, you know, I'm seeing some of the younger generation too, purposely not carrying a phone and things of that nature, so that they are having more intentional interaction. So, and kudos to them. Anybody else before we go on? Ms. James?
was thinking, just from the way I grew up and how I was isolated,
Mhm.
that I'm not fully socially adept. I don't know how to act in certain situations, and it's taken a long time, because I think you can keep a child away from social interaction
Mhm.
too much also. That's what, you know, we need programs for the children in churches, you know, and even teaching them how to go out into that world when it's secular,
Mhm.
to hold on to the values and everything, because if you pull a child away too much,
Mhm.
they're not gonna be, they don't know how to act in society.
Correct. Yeah, there has to be some interaction.
There's
Yes.
a balance.
Yep. That's why I know like a lot of homeschool communities we'll like branch out to other homeschool communities to get more social active, activity with our kids. So,
And now that I'm on, I think if I've got a little bit more, I wanna help that child that doesn't have as much, because you know, they don't get to go, and they don't get to do these things, and sometimes we don't think of that
Right.
as adults.
That's right.
Maybe that little kid acts out and gets wild and says, "Psst," because they don't have as much.
right.
And it's a shame, to them, they feel,
Like a shun.
yeah.
Mhm. So in section B, it says discipline your children, and it's Proverbs 29:15 and Ephesians 6:4. Proverbs 29:15 says, "The rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself bringeth his mother to shame." Ephesians 6:4 says, "And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord." So guiding our children to adulthood and maturity will often necessitate correction and discipline. They are not robots which can be programmed to function flawlessly. And I don't think anybody would want that. You want them to grow and see who they're going to be, Because they are free moral agents who often test their ability to choose their own way. Even as babies, unable to intelligently articulate what they want, our children can demonstrate rigid independence of thought and will. While good behavior and manners are expected and encouraged in our children, bad behavior and rudeness must be addressed in loving but firm ways. And I think that is a challenge for people, addressing the bad behavior and rudeness. Because a lot of times, somebody who comes off as, being firm and disciplined often are thought about as mean.
Yep.
But it's nothing, it's not that they're being mean about something, these are the standards and these are the boundaries and these are the behaviors that are expected. So a lot of times that mean person is just trying to establish with somebody, whether it be younger or older, that, okay, these are the standards which, we are being held to.
Choices have consequences.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of time, niceness isn't appropriate. We don't always need to be nice. We always need to be loving. But sometimes if you're too nice, people take advantage of that, and they don't understand what the rules are. On a little soapbox.
Ask God, when towards his children,
Mm-hmm.
when the pastor's bringing the word up, he's up there making it candy-coated, sugar-coated, and all, that.
Yeah.
That ain't what the Lord wants.
No.
He wants us to learn what to do, discipline ourselves in him
Exactly.
and do his will.
Right.
And if the pastor is up there sugar-coating everything,
Mm-hmm.
defeats the purpose.
Miss Janie?
Talk about firm boundaries too, to know the consequences of those actions.
Mm-hmm.
State to them what is expected. And, when I was a kid and I went to a friend's house,
Mm-hmm.
and I love my friends and I love getting to go to their houses, but the mother of one of my friends said, "I wish my daughter had your manners and would say please and thank you and be so polite."
Mm-hmm.
But if I didn't do that, my mom and dad would tell me what the consequences would be if the word came back to me that you're being rude and ugly.
Right.
But at the same time, when she came to stay with me some, my mom's like, "I wish that kid would go home." Behind her back.
Right.
Is that kid ever gonna go home? And I'm like, "Well, Mom, I'm trying to, I'm trying to teach her, maybe just tell her not." And I was like, "I don't know, I was just a kid, but I loved her."
Mhm. I remember a few years ago, we had a friend's kids over the house for a little while. It was a day. And I think we were just like watching them for a few hours. And one of them was not behaving properly. So I ended up having the child sit on the couch. And the child sat on the couch. And when the parent came to pick up the child was sitting on the couch. They're like, how did you do that? I just did it. You know, and it takes patience on the adult's part too, and persistence. Because a lot of times, you know, if we have to enforce something, we don't want to get tired in it, you know, because they can always come back, mom, 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 until they wear you out, you know. But it's that persistence and that perseverance that really sets the line with them, you know.
I think kids need that. They need those boundaries.
Mhm.
They strive for those boundaries. I used to say, when my kids were younger, I used to say, sometimes they would get to that point where they would push and push and push to where when I reacted, it was like it reset them.
Yes. Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I
I
know
mean,
exactly
and
what
it's
you
like,
mean.
if I don't make my kids mad at least once a week, I'm probably not doing it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sometimes every other day, you know?
Exactly. Sometimes.
There's a show, it's secular, but it's called The Nanny. She reprograms kids for parents. And she's, a lot of it would point back to biblical about teaching them, you know, teaching the parents that these are little people that will, they're people, they're individuals.
Mhm.
She says you get down there and you look them in the eye when you're telling and be consistent, you know, all the good rules.
Mhm.
But it goes with biblical, if you read it and pertain it to it, it's a secular show, but, you know, the nanny is teaching the parents as well as the kids how to reprogram
Mhm.
for the discipline part and sticking to it.
Because a lot of parents today don't know that
If
discipline.
you're not consistent
Right.
yourself, they're not gonna be, if you say, I'm gonna
Yeah, the
smack
kids
your
are gonna
butt,
be
you
out
do that
of whack.
again, and then they do it again and you don't smack them, they know where the boundaries.
Exactly. One of my
I'm learning this, I'm trying to learn this, so I know, because I do not feel like I raised my child in the right disciplined way.
Mhm.
I kind of raised him like we were taught, I'm just gonna smack you, you'll know. You'll know I've smacked you and don't do it again.
Yeah.
But that's not always the best thing.
Correct.
Sometimes they need to know why.
Yes.
Even teachers do a lot of parenting.
Mhm.
I mean, I worked with a second grade teacher, and I love the way that she would do it. Like, when they came in second grade, when they went through the lunch line and getting their food, like, she taught them to say, thank you, thank you. And even, like, now I'm in fourth grade, and I have some of those kids, you know, that were in second grade, and they still say, thank you, yes, please.
Good.
No, please, thank you.
Wow.
You know, and that's just one of, you know, I think that's as important as teaching them math,
It
teaching them
is.
reading, you know,
It
just
is.
those life skills to
Mhm.
be a good person.
Because a lot of kids aren't getting that these days. You know, one of my kids always said that, you know, Dad made me strict, but you always know what you're getting. You know, you always know where you stand. You always know what to expect. You know, if you step out of line, the correction that's coming. So, consistency is key. You know, and in Proverbs 29:15, Solomon declared the necessity of discipline. The rod and reproof are not instruments of affliction, but they are meant to direct children towards better choices and behavior. That's kind of what we were just talking about. The rod refers to punitive correction, whereas reproof describes verbal correction. That's what Miss Janie was just talking about. Both are a necessity in guiding and directing our children to maturity. We tend to learn through hardship, difficulty, and suffering. To give in to every whim and fancy of our children to keep them happy is to severely stunt their emotional development and jeopardize their future relationships. You know, and I think that's a very true, on-point statement.
Yes.
Spanking children or corporal punishment by parents and guardians is frowned upon in our modern world. Several nations of the world have banned the practice entirely, and most psychologists see it more destructive to a child than productive. In an article in Science-Based Medicine, pediatrician Clay Jones, MD, wrote, "Spanking doesn't tend to work very well, and certainly is less effective form of punishment than timeout strategies or other negative punishments like removal of privileges." Does anybody agree with that?
I think it takes both. I think it takes an even measure, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
because some kids are very determined to push the boundaries.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I know from being a stubborn child, you're bound and determined to push my son, push that boundary. There comes a time when you look them in the eye and you try taking away things and you've done everything that you can to treat them, okay, I'm listening.
Mm-hmm.
But you are gonna be, you're gonna get this took away and go sit in the room and it's like, I don't care, I'm gonna still do it anyway.
Right.
And that's stubbornness.
Yes.
I think it depends on the child too. I think it depends on the child.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not all children are the
Some
same.
need more spankings than others.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I know my oldest less, I mean, Matt got more spankings than I
Me.
carried a stick to church.
I was the one that spanked my kids. He was the talker. And they would rather have the spanking than the talking because they would tell their daddy, just spank us already, daddy, we can't take it.
Yeah, I think there are those that push boundaries more, like my daughter, like I could raise my voice a little at her and she would just like,
Mm-hmm.
she would cry. So, I mean, I think it's just, sometimes you have to parent depending on that child's
Did she
personality.
ever
Yes.
push to the point where she'd go ahead and do it anyway, even if you raised the voice, did she ever push to the point where she went and did it anyway?
She was pretty easy, the Lord knew I needed a break in between. That's what I always say, she was easy.
Mm.
Maybe those parents that's got that one that says, I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I kept my grandkids alive when they were small, and I never had to put anything away. They knew I was the disciplinarian in my family. And all the nieces and nephews hated me because I made them mine when they were at my house. I didn't care whose kid it was, they
Mhm.
minded when they were at my house.
Right.
My grandkids would bring friends to my house, and the youngest one, she would say, "This is Grandma's, you don't touch it."
And that's the way it should be, you know? Anybody else? So in Ephesians 6:4, Paul's comments are part of a section that deals with relationships within the family. In the latter part of chapter 5, Paul instructed the proper behavior of husbands and wives to each other. In the opening verse of chapter 6, he urged children to obey their parents. And in verse 4, he advised all fathers concerning their relationship with their children. It should not be characterized by frustration and strife, but by encouragement and godly correction. The atmosphere in the home should be one of peace, harmony, and love. The existence of those qualities will not happen without deliberate action and maintenance. As children grow to maturity, they experience a myriad of mental, emotional, and spiritual changes. The oversight of parents is necessary to produce well-balanced youth who become well-adjusted adults. Paul advised the use of discipline and correction in the process. The Greek word translated as nurture implies chastening, while admonition implies calling attention to or warning children. Now this paragraph, because I remember this, Dr. Benjamin Spock, he was from 1903 to 1998. Anybody here remember Dr. Spock? Mm-hmm. Was an influential pediatrician whose writings encouraged millions of American parents to raise their children in a manner that was criticized as too permissive. He stressed that listening to children and appreciating their individuality was more beneficial than the strict manner of child rearing recommended by pediatricians of his day. In his later years, Spock apparently had a change of mind concerning his views. He is reported to have said, "We have reared a generation of brats. Parents aren't firm enough with their children for fear of losing their love or incurring their resentment. This is a cruel deprivation that we professionals have imposed on mothers and fathers. Of course, we did it with the best of intentions. We didn't realize until it was too late how our know-it-all attitude was undermining the self-assurance of parents." That's a statement right there. You know, because I remember.
He was owning up to a mistake, I mean, you know.
But you know,
Yeah,
raising
he owned up to
children.
that, didn't he?
I'm sorry.
He went back and owned up to
Yeah.
being wrong, you know.
Yeah, but raising children based on what that influence was in that day. I mean, if you spanked a child then, you were frowned upon. You know, if you didn't use timeouts or listening and hearing and understanding and all those kind of ways to deal with kids,
Yeah.
you know, it was not viewed as good parenting. Miss Jane, did you have something?
I had an older Sunday school teacher said, "That man don't know what he's talking about. He doesn't have any children, and if he don't go by the Bible, he don't know what he's talking about
Mhm.
anyway."
Right.
When we as some teenagers were discussing Dr. Spock, I was always about reading about and finding out, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but, all these older people around us were saying, "This man's lost his mind. He ought to try to raise some of these youngins around you."
Yeah.
But I always grew up wondering, you know, some of them were very heavy-handed, and you didn't know if, you know, they never told their children they loved them, but they
Mhm.
sure gave them a heavy hand of discipline.
Right.
But that's when I kind of come to the conclusion it takes
There is a balance that's
a
needed.
balance.
Yes. You can't just be a heavy hand. So, purpose of divine correction. Evidence of God's love. Hebrews 12:5-8. "And ye have forgotten the exhortation which speaketh unto you as unto children. My son, despise not thou chastening of the Lord, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. For whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth, encourageth every son who receiveth. If ye, enduring chastening, God deal with you as with sons. For what son is he whom the Father chasteneth not? But if ye be without chastisement, wherefore all are partakers, then are ye bastards and not sons." It's a hard verse to read. So in Hebrews 12, the writer encourages believers to faithfully follow the path of righteousness. He points to Jesus as our model of fortitude and determination, even in the face of challenges. And in verse 2, as God the Father allowed his Son to suffer, we too may face challenges that appear to be divine chastening. Rather than resist out of rebellion or faint in exasperation when under affliction, we should consider divine correction as a sign of sonship, which is verses 5 and 6. God's love for his children is not just revealed in his loving care, but also in his firm chastisement. Though we delight in the pleasant expectations and experiences of God's love, we must realize the fullness of his love allows for rebuke and correction in our process of spiritual maturity. As discipline is necessary for the development of natural children, chastisement is part of the growth of spiritual children. Where there is no correction, there is no true love and no evidence of sonship. The next section is entitled Divine Discipline. It's a little gray box. The goal of divine discipline is not to drive us away from God, but to draw us to him, so we may see him for who he is. And that was a quote from Timothy Paul Jones. And I think people struggle with that, because when they're being chastised, whether it's, a physical parent or God or wherever that chastisement comes, I think nature says to run away. So it's very important for us to realize that when we're going through something, that is really time for us really to focus in on what's going on and our relationships, both with God and with our family and friends. Go ahead, Joe.
So just briefly go back to the thing about invoking your child to look at children to wrath.
Mm-hmm.
One way that can happen is if you are unjust in your punishment. Let's say you punish a child based on something that you thought he did.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say, for example, you see a child running to the sanctuary. Well, the door's swinging shut. You don't know what he did in the sanctuary.
Right.
If you're going to punish him for running around the sanctuary. You didn't see that.
Right.
And if he didn't run around in the sanctuary, now you have punished him unjustly.
Mm-hmm.
That can give him, especially a male child, that can give him problems with authority figures.
Mm-hmm.
You also give him attitudes about God. For example, a child that has been unjustly punished by his father. The phrase Father God is an oxymoron,
Mm-hmm.
because God is powerful and good and a just judge. But your father was not just. And so that.
No, that's a good point. Making sure that you that you confirm that there's been a problem before you correct it. Like Joe was saying, you don't know if a child comes in through the sanctuary doors and the doors swing shut, you don't know what the child is doing. You don't know if they're in here running around. So you can't go and correct them for running around if you don't know what they're doing. So harvest of righteousness and peace, which is Hebrews 12, 9 through 11. Furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh which corrected us, and we gave them reverence. Shall we not much rather be in subjection unto the Father of spirits and live? For they verily, for a few days, chastened us after their own pleasure, but he, for our profit, that we might be partakers in his holiness. Now no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. So the loving correction of a parent elicits the obedience and respect of their children. Boys and girls learn to honor their parents' expectations and mind their manners as they are instructed. The tendency to display rudeness and immaturity usually diminishes through loving but firm discipline. Over time, they become well-behaved and responsible youth. In the same way, we as Christians should submit to God's discipline and reverential fear. God's intention in correcting us is to elicit holy character and conduct that confirms our position as his children. Being corrected by authorities is not pleasant for children. No child looks forward to being punished, rebuked, or chastised. Regardless of a child's dislike for punishment, it is a necessary part of their growth. The unpleasantness of discipline is conductive to a child's learning and development. God's chastisement of his children is designed to produce the fruit of righteousness. So Jesus taught his disciples about painful but purposeful pruning in John 15, 1 and 2, where he says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away. And every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it might bring forth more fruit. So even in the good of a child's behavior or our behavior, there could still be some, I don't want to say discipline, but fine-tuning, you know? So like, you're doing a great job. Now if you just add, do a little bit more, do this a little bit differently, you'll see more out of it. So there's always a coachable lesson to be taught. So the earthly discipline of our children should be modeled after God's design for his children. Our intention should be to curb their negative tendencies and cultivate positive qualities that indicate good character. Though our best efforts will be imperfect due to our limitations, we should prayerfully strive to produce mature and responsible adults. We should also take confidence in knowing our Heavenly Father will perfect us as we follow him in faith and obedience. So, with all that being said, though, so what's the benefit of a child honoring their parents?
Not only is it more pleasing to God, but it's a maturity.
Mm-hmm.
It's bringing that child to adulthood, to be able to function in society, even to be a good citizen, to
Mm-hmm.
be a,
Keep them out of jail, maybe?
pardon me?
Keep them out of jail, maybe?
Exactly.
That's the truth.
There are many benefits of a child, honoring their parents. And with that, we're going to jump over to page 208, which is section 3 of the next lesson.
Page 208.
And it's entitled Benefits of Honoring Parents. And section A is wisdom and knowledge, which is Proverbs 1, 8, and 9, along with 2, 1 through 6. So Proverbs 1, 8, and 9 says, My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. For they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. And 2, 1 through 6 says, My son, if thou wilt receive my words, and hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom, and apply thine heart to understanding. Yea, if thou criest after knowledge, and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver, and searchest for her as for hid treasures, then thou shalt understand the fear of the Lord, and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. Now, one of the benefits of honoring our parents is the knowledge we gain to help navigate our lives. Parental advice and guidance are necessary for our development in the process of maturity. Though often questioned in our ignorance, the instructions we receive tend to be appreciated and valued in our later years. In Proverbs 1:8, Solomon urged his son to pay attention to the guidance of his parents, knowing how immature children resist adult directives. He likened parental instruction to precious jewelry. Excuse me one second. So a father's instruction and a mother's law can add similar value to the lives of their children. As they heed, obey, and live according to the words of their parents, children demonstrate beautiful character and mark themselves as coming from a good family. They create moral habits and mindsets that can permeate the family line for generations. Now, I remember growing up, as we talked, as we were opening up, you were, I remember that saying, from a good family, or not from a good family. You'd see different kids and how they behaved, and you could, and there was always that statement. I remember hearing from the adults, "Oh, that's a good family. That's not a good family. Oh, stay away from them." But in Proverbs 2, Solomon continued to encourage taking heed to parental instruction and the advantages it provides. Words of guidance and instructions are essentially intended to impart wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. They are so necessary that they should be pursued in the same manner as some people seek material treasures. So these days, what do you think is pursued more? Do you think material? I guess that was an easy one. Yeah. I see people going more for the money and the fame and the spotlight than they do going for wisdom or knowledge or, understanding. Bless you. And why do you think that is? Do you think it's just because it's more flashy, more popular, more, I don't know, glitzy?
That's what the world teaches.
The world does push that.
You'll be better thought of if you have more.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about coming from a good or a bad family, sometimes you will grade it on how much money you had,
Mhm.
how much, what their family had. But, from, looking behind the curtain, it wasn't always those families with a whole lot of money when the kid was sad because the things going on behind the curtain.
Right.
I think the world would push it toward the glitz and the glitter and the,
Yeah.
if I've got a whole lot, I can be a whole lot.
Yes.
I think there's searching for joy and happiness in the monetary, in the, in how many likes they have and how many this or that.
Mhm.
And I think that's why you see so many, like, celebrities and stuff like that too, like depressed and, or, a lot of them take their lives and stuff. I think they're searching for happiness
Mhm.
and they don't necessarily realize that they can have all the happiness in the world if they have Jesus.
Right. Yeah, they're
That's what they're missing, but
that's
they don't.
exactly what they're missing. Yeah, they're chasing the money, they're chasing the fame, they're chasing to fill that as people say, that empty hole that only Jesus could fill. And I think that that's the difference really between happiness and joy right there. You could chase happiness all you want, but you get to know Jesus and that joy is always there. And I think that replaces all the money, all the fame, all the glitz, all the lights. That joy, you don't need any of that other stuff. You really don't. And that comes with wisdom and knowledge too. So the godly instruction of parents leads to treasures of far greater value than earthly riches. In verse 5, Solomon indicated children who earnestly seek the wisdom of their godly parents ultimately discover a relationship with God. The fear of the Lord indicates the response of someone who has encountered God. He is revered and respected as we become aware of his presence. The knowledge of God is also related to our connection with him. The word here translated as knowledge differs from the one in verse 3, which points to a more general sense of knowledge as information. Here it implies experiencing God. In verse 6 further develops the idea that true wisdom, knowledge, and understanding derives from God. He is their source and origin. They proceed out of his being and are intended for our benefit. Consequently, parents who know and serve God are well positioned to impart godly instruction on their children. The guidance they give to govern the thoughts and behaviors of their offspring is based on the moral and ethical pronouncements of God and His Word. In heeding and obeying these instructions, children become more aware of God and learn to honor Him. Thus, the guidance of their ways leads to an understanding of His way. And our last section that we're going to go through is B, better and longer life, which is Ephesians 6, 2 and 3. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. Well-being in life doesn't mean our lives will be perfect and void of disappointment. Even the most faithful biblical heroes faced severe challenges as they, let's start that one over. Well-being in life doesn't mean our lives will be perfect and void of disappointment. Even the most faithful biblical heroes face severe challenges as they serve God. Psalm 34:19 indicates believers will have many afflictions, and Jesus warned that his followers will face tribulation in John 16:33. Now, Psalm 34:19 says, "Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivereth him out of them all." And the verse in John, which is 16:33, states, "These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." And that was Jesus speaking. So in both instances, however, God promised his presence and our ultimate victory. Well-being means we are pleasing to God and can live assured of his provision and protection. Unbelievers and disobedient children cannot expect to have this confidence or experience. In Ephesians 6:3, Paul expanded the idea of the promise of living long on the earth. The multicultural setting of the Ephesians church necessitated a revised understanding considering the new covenant. The Jews had long lost control of the promised land. Christianity had spread into other places, in a context where Jews and Gentiles worshiped God together. Viewing the principles of the Old Testament through the current experience showed their enduring truth. Obedient children could anticipate leading full lives free of the threat of premature death. The godly instruction and moral guidance of their parents would set them on a healthy course of life. Disobedience potentially resulted in unwise and unhealthy choices that tend to shorten one's life. I'm just going to close with this. It's the last section it's on page 211. And it says, while children with psychological and emotional deficiencies are common in our modern world, some dysfunctions can be addressed or avoided by adhering to biblical standard established for the family. Parents must ensure they are honoring God's instruction for relating to Him, to each other, and to their children. When the family dynamic is marked by divine order, the blessings of God are present. Our children will honor and obey our guidance, resulting in their welfare and fulfillment in life. Susanna Wesley is known to have said, "The child that never learns to obey his parents in the home will not obey God or man out of the home." And I think this section where it says, parents must ensure they are honoring God's instructions for relating to Him, to each other, and to their children. When the family dynamic is marked by divine order, the blessings of God are present. I think that's a very true statement. You know, and I think the harder we work to make sure that our homes are structured in that divine order, the better off we are. And would anybody else like to add anything in closing?
Be the example everywhere you go, even when it isn't your children, in front of those
Mhm.
children, because they may not have that family dynamic
Right.
that they do need, but to show them there is another way, even if you're not the parent.
Exactly. Be that example. So, anybody else? Sister Priscilla, can you close us in prayer, please?
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we pray you will touch each and every life here, Lord. We pray, Lord, that you'll help us to take the messages that you have given us, help us to apply it to our lives and to the lives of those around us, children that we are an example to. Pray, Lord, that you'll be with each and every one of us, Lord. Help us to keep our eyes on you, Lord, and our hearts filled with you. We pray in your precious name.
Amen. Next week, we will be back on track with lesson 12, teaching biblical practices in the home.